Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to this live stream on Abdurraheem Green's official YouTube channel. And today we're going to be speaking about flow. And I tried to make this poster quite, did you like the poster, Sheikh?
Oh, it was you just took a screenshot from the book.
No.
I've got that exact book. I've got that book with that particular graphic cover on it.
Did you like how I radiated you? You looked like Platonic,
I just look radiating anyway, bro. It doesn't matter what you do with me.
MashaAllah. Okay, so firstly, let's get into this. What is flow? And I mean, a lot of people may not have heard of the book. And why is this concept so interesting?
Okay, it's to do with happiness, right? So there was a massive study done on human happiness. I think sort of into the, I wouldn't say the early stages, but sort of the more developmental stages of positive psychology. Like most studies in human psychology, early studies were really concentrating on, negative things like depression, anger, anxiety, so on and so forth. But there was a movement that started positive psychology. So they wanted to start to understand about, positive things, like love and happiness and joy and so on and so forth, and, positive emotions, right? And, it's been it's been actually in many ways revolutionary. It's been very, very important. So one of these studies that was done, and it's particularly impressive because it was such a huge study, and it's also impressive because it was done cross-culturally. So a lot of studies in psychology tend to be, they tend to basically be white, European, Western university students, right? So it's literally all you conclude for a lot of psychology studies. All you conclude is that white Western university students
they have a word.
Experience.
They have a word for it. It's called weird. Western educated industrial
something.
Yeah, rich, democratic. Yeah.
So there you go. So
weird.
Exactly. Yes, there's a whole book on that which I didn't read. And even of course Freud, in his whole thing of psychoanalysis, is all based in, in Germany. Like, Germans, what can I say? So I mean, but enough said about that. But what was interesting about this study on human happiness is that it was cross-cultural, so it was done all over the world. And very quickly the experiment was that they I think people carried a device, and the device would randomly trigger at certain times, and when the device triggered, they would have to enter some data about what they were doing and how they felt when they were doing it. All right. So anyway, collecting all of this data, analyzing it, they came to the conclusion, right, that human beings were most happy when they were in what has become known as a flow state, or they call it optimal experience. Now, I sort of have to describe what it is. I think everybody will have experienced it, hopefully at some time. The more you experience it, the more happy you tend to be. So I think the main important thing is to understand is that the conclusion of this study is that if you ask most people what makes them happy, they will generally say things that you can imagine they will say: money, sex, movies, nice car, nice house, wealth, power, fame. Yeah, those type of things. So if you ask people, what do you think is going to make you happy? Most people everywhere, by the way, this is not a Western thing. This is everywhere, right? People will say, a lot of people will also say family and friends, by the way, as well, right? But these things, they imagine that these things will make them happy. But when they actually examine it, they found that these things don't really make them happy. I mean, they make people happy for a very short time. When you get a new thing, when you get some new product, when you get something new, you feel happy for a bit, you feel good for a bit, but then it fades off really quickly. They have a beautiful term for it. They call it hedonistic entropy, right? I love that term. So hedonistic entropy just means that, you know, the joy fades quickly. Entropy means, you know, it dissipates. So again, to be honest, most people sort of know this. When you confront people with them and you make people will sit down and talk, you know, they'll admit it, right? These things don't really make me happy, but we constantly, well, because I guess we live in a society that indoctrinates us to believe. That's the whole consumer society, is to keep fooling us and to keep brainwashing us and keep indoctrinating us that, you know, things make us happy, but they just don't. So what does make us happy? What are the things that really make us happy? So what makes us happy? That the time that human beings are most happy and they consistently report the highest states of happiness, of feeling good about themselves, right, is what they call a flow state. It's also called optimal experience, right? Now, the weird thing about these flow states is that they are actually not necessarily easy to achieve. And that's it. That's, by the way, one of the reasons why they actually make you profoundly happy and they give you a long lasting sense of happiness and achievement is because it takes effort in order to reach that state. Okay. So this flow state, or this state of optimal experience, and there's a very interesting offshoot to this as well, Sabur, right? Which is sort of being looked into. There's a book I'm reading now called The Rise of the Superman, but that, I haven't finished it. But that's going to be that's the next stage from that's the next stage from a flow experience. There's a whole nother level above that, right? Where something just incredible starts to happen in the human mind, right? It's just literally mind blowing, right? But most people haven't even got to the stage where they you know, I mean, ideally as a human being, you want to try and live in a permanent state of optimal experience. So the more optimal experiences you can stitch together in your life, basically the happier you will be.
Yeah.
So what are the conditions, right? What are the conditions for this flow state? And I did say on my Instagram, and like I want to end up finishing talking about like organized religion, right? And you'll see why, right? You'll see why organized religion is going to make you happy. When you understand what optimal experience is, when you understand what real happiness is, you'll understand why organized religion, not wishy-washy, do it as you like spirituality, yeah, it's not going to do it for you. It will not do it for you. Yeah, maybe a bit of yoga because it's, you know, it can be hard, but not as a long-term thing, right? Okay, so what are the conditions? First of all, the first thing that helps is having an autotelic personality. So what is that? What the hell's an autotelic personality? So the first thing is that you do things for their own sake, right? This is the first thing. You do it for their own sake, not in order to. So this is the first interesting thing, is that if you're going to look for happiness, you won't find it. You can't look for happiness, right? This is like the first secret. It's the paradox. The paradox of happiness is that the more you look for it, the less likely you are to find it. So it's almost as if you have to abandon looking for happiness because you're not going to find, you know. So this is the first thing. So you have to, it has to be autotelic. So the action that you are doing, you do it for its own sake. That's what it is, just for the sake of that action itself. This is the first thing. It's interesting because it's a little bit like the concept of niyyah and intention in Islam, right? It's very interesting, right? You will see the wisdom. Like when you study this stuff, it is mind blowing that you see how perfect the religion of Islam is, right? I mean, to be honest, any organized, systemized religion is going to help you. Islam is going to help you like way more, I think, because obviously, you know, we know it's from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? So that's the first thing. The second thing is that the action that you're doing, it has to be defined, right? So it has to have some parameters. It can't just be endless. It has to have, in a sense, a beginning and an end, and it has to have some sort of goal that you can reach. So this is one of the things that in order to reach the flow state, you need to have the thing that you are participating in has a beginning and it has an end, right? So it has defined parameters. Yeah. The second thing is, and this is interesting, is it can't be too easy. If it's too easy, you will get bored and you won't feel a sense of achievement and accomplishment. And this is the big thing. The big thing is the feeling that you've really accomplished something significant. So ideally, the activity needs to actually be on the very, very limit of your capabilities. Yeah. It has to be on the edge. You know, you talk about being on the edge. You're right on the edge. If it's too hard, on the other hand, you will get disheartened and you won't be able to see it through. So the ideal position is that you are pushing yourself to the very limits of your capabilities. It's on that very fine edge. Yeah. Okay. So those are the two of the parameters. The third and interesting parameter, it's three, right? So no, what did I say? Well, autotelic, you do it for its own sake. Number two, it's defined. Number three, it's on the edge of your capabilities. It's not too easy and it's not too hard, right? And number four, right? The fourth thing is that you, in some way, I mean, it could be quite vague, but in some way, shape or form, you should not only feel that you are improving yourself in some way, but also you are contributing, and this is interesting, that in some way you are contributing to the betterment of humanity. It doesn't need to be the whole of humanity, right? It could just be a little tribe or a little group of human beings in which this activity is taking place, right? So these are optimal experiences, and they can be, you know, in anything. Most people will be familiar with flow state in sporting activities, right? That's where most people, because sports, especially team sports, you know, it has all the ingredients, right? You play sport for its own sake, right? There's not really any other reason you do it, because it's fun, because it's for its own sake. Yeah, it has a beginning and an end point. The match starts at a certain time, it finishes at a certain time, and you have a certain goal. In other words, you want to try and win the match by scoring goals or whatever it may be, right? Okay. And obviously, generally, you just keep pushing yourself. Like with sports, there's not really a limit. And that's what's great about it. You can always keep pushing your boundaries. You can always be better at whatever it is you're doing, right? So there's always that possibility of pushing yourself. And thirdly, obviously, you're playing in a team with other people who are also in that sport. So there is that combination of all of those things taking place in sports. It could be sports, it could be chess, but it could be in anything. It could be at work. A lot of people reach flow state in work, right? It could be in work, it could be in photography, it could be in art, it could be in editing. And most importantly, what you can see now, having described it, why religion, organized religion, is very, very good at producing flow states, right? Yeah. Because all organized religions, and one verse of the Quran that really, you know, for me, it's like you could call it the verse of flow, right? The ayah of flow, right? It's actually the ayah about Ramadan. Yeah. يا أيها الذين آمنوا كتب عليكم الصيام كما كتب على الذين من قبلكم لعلكم تتقون. Oh, you who believe, fasting has been prescribed for you. Fasting probably is like one of those disciplines in Islam. It's for every religion. Every religion has fasting. Yeah, so Allah has prescribed fasting for you as He prescribed it for those before you. It's in Judaism, it's in Christianity, it's in Buddhism, it's in every religion, right? Maybe the exact details of how the fasting takes place is different, but it's there in every religion. It has it. Yeah, Hinduism has it. It's as far as I know, every religion has it, right? You know, and you're with this group of believers, so it's something you're doing. It's not just you do it, especially in the Ramadan, although it's a personal act of worship, you do it with others, right? You have a particular objective. It's defined. You begin your fast at dawn. You break your fast at sunset. And you're doing it for 40 days. It makes it quite challenging, even in winter, to be honest. The accumulation of fasts, it still makes it challenging. Add to that, maybe praying at night and so on and so forth. So you can see how Ramadan, perfect example, who don't
Sheikh Green, we've lost you for
fast,
about we've
who
lost
don't
you for
pray.
about 15 seconds. We lost you for about 15 seconds.
Okay.
So when
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
winter Ramadan, that's where it froze.
Yeah. I
Do
mean, even in winter, I'm saying even in winter when the days are short, right? Still the cumulative effect of fasting day after day after day is still, it's still challenging. And then on top of that, you pray at night. All I'm showing is that it has every single aspect of every single ingredient to produce a flow state. And no wonder people love Ramadan.
Yeah.
Right? Even Muslims who don't practice any other time of the year, you'll find they practice Ramadan, right?
Yeah.
And it has all of those ingredients. Now, not only Ramadan, of course, it applies to everything. Praying 5 times a day,
Yeah.
right? Giving the regular charity, okay? Making Hajj, wow, right? Making Hajj is a really challenging. I mean, even today it's challenging. In the past, it used to be even more challenging, right? I mean, it was almost a life or death situation. You made Hajj in the old days. There's a good chance 50-50 you wouldn't come back, right?
Yeah.
So, and even until today, it's, for most people, it is pushing them to the very edge of what they are physically, mentally, and spiritually capable of. And no wonder that you come back from that absolutely transformed. But look, from a psychological perspective, I'm talking purely from the point of view of psychology, right? Put aside any claim to religious truth, right? Any religion, right, that has these type of organized, systemized, clearly bound rituals is going to benefit you psychologically massively.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, this is not even going into how, and this is, by the way, very interesting. And I don't really recommend everybody picks up the book Flow and reads it, because I've recommended it to people before, and it's written by an atheist. The guy is not a Muslim, or he's not a Christian. He's an atheist, right? He begins by saying the universe is meaningless. It's not, this is what he says. It's meaningless, right?
Yeah.
So, like he says, you just got to find happiness wherever you can find it, right? So, like, it's not a book that you want to open up and just read, if you're not really strongly founded in your aqidah and so.
Yeah, we've lost you again. Type 1 if you can hear me.
Yeah, sorry, bro. I've switched my I've switched to my 4G because my internet is so rubbish. Yeah. So yeah.
What you were saying, the last thing you were
I
saying
can't even
was
remember what I was
about.
saying now.
Yeah, what you were saying, the last thing you were saying was basically about picking up the book. It's written by an atheist, but you're basically talking about the practical benefits. Just before you carry on there was something I wanted you to share with the audience. The author writes about the Native Americans, and there's a really interesting story. I think you should, because it shows how being uncomfortable is a good thing.
I don't really remember. I mean, I remember he tells a
It's
story.
the fish story where they moved around. Do you remember that story?
No.
Okay,
the one that sticks in my mind is the one about a dervish, funnily enough, like a Muslim Sufi guy who's just walking around, and he interviews him, and he details his experience and talks about. So it's quite interesting. He recognizes in the book himself how religion. He talks a lot about religion and flow states, and how religion is conducive to flow states, because of course he's an atheist. He tries to dismiss it. Like, he doesn't do it very convincingly, and I think he himself is probably agnostic in the sense that he realizes there's something there. he says, however, religions need to keep reinventing themselves, right? He said, because they do. I mean, one of the things he says is they offer, they answer these existential questions. Why are we here? What's it all about? And it's very interesting. In his book, he does say it's not enough to string together flow states. It's not enough just to sort of keep playing sports and, whatever. Like he said, no, you have to have an overriding existential explanation for why we're here. What's it all for, right? What's the purpose of life? He said, you have to have a flow state in that realm as well. It's very interesting, but he himself doesn't really offer any explanation as to what it might be, right? But he recognizes that religions have it. And the very interesting thing as well, he says that this is not a type of knowledge that you can inherit. It has to be experienced by everybody.
Knowledge, yeah.
Right? There's no, it's not like, you build, like on scientific knowledge, you build on scientific knowledge, right? You can build on it, right? He says, no, with this, you can't. Everyone has to experience it. And he did make what I believe is a really profound point, okay? And that is that, and this is something unfortunately that as Muslims I think we have to realize, right, is the old narrative of, because traditionally, when I say traditionally, culturally, for quite a while now in Islamic history, this whole arena of thought has been covered by tasawwuf, right? But I believe exactly what he describes. That language is defunct now, right? Mostly the language of tasawwuf and the sort of processes and the rituals, they're just not suitable, right? We need to find a new language. We need to find a new way of expressing these truths and understanding them and implementing them. And I think he has a very good point there, right? This is the problem, is because, it becomes archaic. And he accuses all religions of this. I don't think that's necessarily true. I don't think that the basic religious tenets of Islam and the basic fundamental practices are universal. But unfortunately, if we keep trying to express it in the same ways, it doesn't always work. So we have to find, fresh ways of experiencing these fundamental deep truths, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's happened. You see, it has happened, throughout history, right?
Yeah.
I think in the early days of Islam, it was very much based upon knowledge and studying and learning hadith and studying fiqh. This was itself was a spiritual experience. People maybe think of it.
It's tough to do. And I think that takes, it takes out a bit of the spirituality when you just go on your phone and find a narration, as opposed to leaving your wife and children and going on a horse.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's the thing, is that knowledge. Now, I guess what happened is knowledge became so accessible. Once the hadith books were collected, before it was people would travel thousands of miles to get one hadith, to listen to hadith being narrated and to try and find, so there's your flow state taking place right there. Right. But now you just open a book, like you said, you don't, like back in the days, I always tell everyone, studying, giving talks and lectures was a whole different thing. We couldn't just search on the internet. You had to buy the books and read them cover to cover and know the books. And then you had to be able to pick those books and find what you were looking for, right? So now it's just like you do a Google search, right? And alhamdulillah, most of the time someone's already done a lecture on it for you. It's like,
It's interesting you say that, Sheikh, because there's this concept that some thinkers have put forward of information nihilism, right? That in an age of digital information, we're actually overwhelmed. We get decision paralysis. Information starts to become meaningless because we can't figure out what's important, what's not. And it's almost like a meaningless jargon, even though it's so rich.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, you can see that. I mean, especially decision paralysis and the amount of information is just so huge. It's just overwhelming, right? It's very, very easy to get lost in it. But again, I think, back to that topic of, where do we find our flow state? Like, I guess that what happened is that, you know, the scholarly tradition became very, became people just arguing about minutiae and details, and so busy trying to find the shortest isnad of a hadith and not even really caring what the hadith actually said, right? So you can see within this environment then the whole road of concentrating on ibadah, on dhikr, on renouncing the world, living a simple life, living an austere life. But I'm not saying there's not room for all of that. There's room for still both of those things. But I think that there's good, we probably need to find different ways, different ways of connecting to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and finding those flow states, I guess.
I think something here, which is important to highlight is, in the beginning of the talk, Sheikh, you spoke about we want happiness and how do we get happiness, and just before you went into the conditions of flow state which leads to happiness, you said something interesting in terms of actually one of the conditions about doing something that's a bit hard. Now, usually when people think of happiness, they think of something that they're comfortable with. And one of the things that has been battered into me over the last couple of years by you directly and the wider team in Ayera is, get out of the tent. You told the story of people who, if only they went slightly further, they could have been saved, but instead they froze to death. And stop being comfortable, step out of your comfort zone.
Push yourself always to the edge of your capabilities. Keep pushing yourself, keep growing. Absolutely. And the thing is, it's very interesting, right? Is that kids are famous for playing computer games and watching TV. Yet when they are, analyzed, when their actual when they actually grade their feelings of happiness, most kids, not all of them, but most kids will say that they do feel happier and they feel a higher state. They don't actually rate those experiences very highly in the happiness scales, although they spend most of their time doing that. What do they rate high on their happiness? And anyway, by the way, anyone who's got kids from the age of 7 right to teenagers will understand what is it like trying to get them out for a walk, what is it like trying to get them outside, trying to do something other than sitting in front of their computers. But once they're there, my kids, it's so funny, right? I take them for these hikes and I take them for these walks and I force them to go outside, and at the end of it, when they're in the car and we're driving home, they're saying to me, Jazakallah khair, may Allah reward you with goodness. And I'm thinking, subhanallah, I just tortured them. I didn't really torture them, but I put them through this. But they loved it, there's feeling and there's a buzz and everyone's feeling like really that they achieved something, right? But it's, the problem with it is the initial effort is required. That's the thing. It's that impetus, right? It's getting that momentum. It's generating that effort, in order to, to do those activities. And that's part of what makes it satisfying. It's the same with praying 5 times a day, right? It's the same, isn't it? Getting up for Fajr. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, what did he say about Fajr and how he commended it? And, when a person prays Fajr and, shaitan blows 3 knots in you, right? And you wake up and you remember Allah, 1 knot is undone, right? You make wudu, the other knot is undone. You pray your salah, the 3rd knot is undone. And a person wakes up feeling refreshed and lively and whatever. But if you don't, you feel lackadaisical. So it takes effort, right? It takes effort to get up, to say your prayers, to leave everything aside, to pray on time. But it's supremely satisfying, right? It is supremely satisfying mentally, spiritually, and so on and so forth, right? So all of these things, that's part of what optimal experience is. The fact that it takes effort is part of what makes it so special. If it's too easy, you wouldn't get that sense of satisfaction. But what really prevents people from even entering into the realm where they can have these flow experiences is that inertia, that initial inertia that you have to overcome. right? And goes back to what we talked about last week. This is where willpower, discipline, forming good habits, right? You see, this is why you need to establish within your kids the habit of, of prayers, the habit of
Yeah.
exercise, right? Because it becomes a lot easier for them to overcome that initial inertia. It becomes just like normal for them, right? I mean, I'm lucky from a point of view of to be honest, from two angles. Alhamdulillah, I've been very blessed. Number one, I was brought up in quite a religious environment, at least in my school, not in my home, but in my school, right? So I had some sort of religious discipline from my early life. Secondly, I come from a very sporty family. Both my mum and dad were very sporty, right? And just the habit of being outdoors, playing sports, and at my school as well. It's like, for me, it's just like I have to do it. It's like, alhamdulillah, that's a blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because I think those two things are very, very, important for general human well-being and happiness,
Mhm.
and the ultimate blessing has been guided to the true religion, which is Islam,
Mhm.
because you can have religion, but ultimately if it's not really, if that religion is leaving you almost with more questions than answers, right, then you're still got that existential anxiety, don't you, bro? Right, you've got that that ontological anxiety, that existential angst, right? Maybe this is why many Muslims are suffering. They have many questions, and unfortunately we don't have enough people who are trained to answer those questions.
Yeah, I mean, it could be that. It also could simply be that, like you mentioned before, they haven't got themselves in a flow state of spirituality. Instead, they're focusing on
Yeah,
tedious issues like how many people in the cave and the dog, as
yeah,
opposed to what's the point of the story. I want to ask you a question because we have just a few minutes left. You have another live coming up. The baker, what is it called? We can push
piece
it
of
here.
cake, piece of cake.
Piece of
It's
cake,
called a
right?
piece of cake, yeah, with me and Dr. Abdulhaq Baker, yeah.
So the
We
question I
are,
have for you to
yeah,
end upon is one of the things I've heard repeatedly from liberals when they want to challenge religion, especially Islam, is come to this way of liberalism because you'll be free. Things will be easier, things will be more comfortable, right? And then about Islam, and you get them on TikTok, you get some atheists doing this as well, saying, look, it's so hard to wear the hijab. Why do that? Why put yourself through these things? So, how would you respond to that based upon the
I mean, everything I just said now is the response to that, right? And that is a complete failure to understand what fundamentally makes a human being happy. That's it. Liberalism, they don't understand. They don't understand happiness. They don't understand what human beings need. They don't understand and realize what are the true needs of human beings. And that is because they are blinded, right, by their limited, materialistic, nihilistic approach, right? This is what it is. They're so rooted in their materialism. They're blinded. They just think that we're just sophisticated monkeys. Give us a banana, right? Give us someone to have sex with, right? Keep us safe from the elements and we should be happy monkeys, right? And it's just not the case at all, right? Because why are people so depressed? Okay, so everything's easier, but I'm not happier, right? I'm actually feeling more distressed, I'm feeling more lonely, I'm feeling more depressed. So what's the solution? I have to take these antidepressants, right? Go on Prozac, take drugs, right? Is this what they call their liberal paradise? It's not a
Yeah.
paradise, it's a flipping nightmare, right? And it comes from a fundamental lack of understanding human nature. That's what it comes from. Human beings don't thrive under taking it easy. We
Yeah.
thrive by being on the very limits of our capabilities and pushing ourselves.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what we need to do, right?
Mm.
So yeah,
And that's what
it's just
Islam provides.
they're so mistaken. And
Mm.
like I said, this is when you understand flow, you'll understand why religion needs to be organized, right?
Mm.
That's why that's the whole point of religion, right? When people say I don't like organized religion, it's like, what? Like,
You're
religion's
disorganized
supposed to be
religion.
organized. That's the whole point of it, right? It's like, what do you want? Disorganized religion then, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So Jazakallah khair, Sheikh. We have
Barakallah, it's been fascinating, bro. Thanks for
yeah,
that, bro.
just a few minutes before your other live stream, 6 minutes. So where can they see the other live stream? The viewers can move over.
I think it's Newcastle FM, Fast FM. Yeah, Fast FM. Yeah, Newcastle Fast FM. So it was a Ramadan radio station. They just kept it going until now. I think maybe until next Ramadan will be soon upon us. Yeah, mashallah. Alhamdulillah, we can find our flow state. Inshallah.
Absolutely. I have an idea for the show, inshallah.
For hosting this. And bro, what's your latest anything interesting on your YouTube channel, bro? Darwinian Delusions?
Well, I'm going to go live in an hour with the world leading expert on orphan genes. And he's the guy who predicted it before anybody else in the world, when everybody said he was mad. And yeah, we're going to go live in an hour, inshallah.
Sorry, he said he was, what did he predict?
He predicted that each organism has genes which don't fit in terms of common ancestors with chimpanzees or other things, right? And other scientists said this is an error. So these orphan genes, they're not real orphans. They do have ancestors, but he said no. And this is about 20 something years ago, and everybody was wrong, and he turned out to be right. That actually each organism has orphan DNA which doesn't fit in any other organism, which challenges the whole idea of universal common ancestry.
Oh my gosh. I mean, that just sounds explosive, bro. Literally, like, wow.
Yeah. He's got a PhD philosophy of biology, and he is known amongst the Christian community. He's well known. Everybody within the academia knows him. Thanks for the plug, by the way.
Yeah, no, bro, it's great, and you know your work is really amazing, mashallah, bro. Keep it up, alhamdulillah. Okay. And I'll have to sort of catch up on that one.
Inshallah.
Got a lot of catching up to do, man. So much catching up to do, but Jazakallah khair. May Allah bless you.
Assalamu alaikum.